Magandang araw. Ako si Kuya Code. Welcome back to my channel where I teach Python through fun and practical examples. Today we'll be continuing to dive into software design patterns. So as you've seen from the thumbnail and probably the title, we're going to be going over the observer pattern. So the observer pattern is a behavioral design pattern that lets you define a subscription mechanism that notifies multiple objects about any events that happen to the object that they're observing. So in this example, we're going to have a boss event, and then we're going to have a number of players, and then when something happens with the boss event, all the players are going to be notified. So we have our parent class, which is abstract player observer, and then we have our player, and then we have our boss event. So we're going to go ahead and add some definitions to and other methods to the boss event here. So we have our init method here. So we'll do self dot players, and the main thing about this is that the boss event is going to have a list of players that are subscribed to it. That way, you'll be able to pass notifications to all those players. So we'll have a list of player observer. Again, something like this is optional. It just basically says the type, which is a list of player observer objects. And then self dot boss engaged equals false. This will be used a bit later. So let's just make our methods here. So first, subscribe. And then we'll have one called unsubscribe. And then we'll have one called spawn boss. And then we'll have one called tank pulls boss. So in a lot of games, a tank is the main player that engages with the boss and keeps his attention, while some of the other weaker players are able to uh, help fight the boss without actually being damaged. So the tank is generally somebody who has a lot of defense, but they doesn't have as much damage as some of the other players, depending on what type of combat they're doing. And then we'll also have the last one here, which is the important one, a method to notify all the players. Okay, we'll fill these in a minute, and now we're going to continue to define this one. So because this comes from player observer, we need to define this, or else it will not work at all. And then that's it for that. And then we can also do another class here, just a special type of player, which is the tank. It comes from player still. I'll do this so we can actually see. Oops. So this will be init self. We'll get the name, and we need to pass in the boss event as well. Super dot init name, which is going to be going to the player, and then self dot boss underscore event equals. I realize that this is this can be like that. Boss event equals boss event. And then what the tank is going to do is basically decide when to engage, because they're usually the first one to start combat with the boss. So we can call it pull boss, and then we can just type self.boss event dot tank pulls boss right there. And then we can just pass in self.name. That's pretty easy, but that's it for this one. For this one, we can just do a print statement, which is going to say self.name, which is going to be the player. received player received event, and then you just type in the event. And the event comes from right here, and we have the player name. So that's it for the player. And this is also good. Now we just need to define the methods for subscribe. In order to subscribe, all the players will need to subscribe to the event. So we'll start with subscribe. So self.players.append player. So imagine you have a dedicated group for this event. Whenever a player joins the group, the player would just be subscribing to the event to get any notifications associated with the event. And this we can pass in self and then the player. And then for unsubscribe, it's kind of the same thing. Self player. This is basically if a person leaves the group. Self.players.remove player. For spawn boss, we'll just print some fancy text like this, and then self.notify players. So this is going to go out to every single player that is subscribed to this event. Let me just see. This comes from down there. Okay, we'll just do the tank pulls boss now. So if not self.boss engaged, so basically if you're not in combat, self.boss engaged equals true. And then we can just print some fancy text here. Tank underscore name, which tank underscore name, which is type string. Tank underscore name has engaged the boss. And then what we need to do is notify all the players that the tank has started the fight. So self.notify players. Tank underscore name has started the fight. Get ready. And then for this player notification one, what we would do is we would loop through all of the players in this player list. And because player comes from player observer, every single player is going to have a notify method. So what we can do is then just call that notify method on all the players. So for player in self.players, player.notify event. And then the event would be here. And let's see here, this is basically the event, which is the string, and then all this text is going to be given to every single player inside of here. So let me just double check that everything else is good. So we have the list of players, boss engaged, subscribe just simply adds it, unsubscribe removes it, spawns boss just notifies all players that the boss has appeared. The tank pulls the boss, notifies the player that the battle basically has started. And then for notify players, we just loop through the players and pass the event. So every single player is going to get the event. And then for the tank, they have their own name, got boss event, and then tank plus boss, that's all the name. So that seems to be it for the classes. So what we need to do is we already have the boss event created, which is good. Let's make some player objects. So we got player 1, player 2, we'll have 3 players, and we'll have the tank player. So we'll have our players here. So those are our 4 players. And then we need to subscribe to the event. So like boss event dot subscribe. So player 1 subscribes, player 2 subscribes, player 3 subscribes, and then the tank also subscribes. And then what we would do is just spawn the boss. Boss event dot spawn boss. Let's just see. Yeah, that's right here, which just gives us some text. And then the last thing we do is the tank itself is going to pull the boss, and that should give us another notification. So let's go ahead and run this. See if we. I probably forgot a self on line 62. Let me just double check what that says. Spawn boss takes 0 position plus 1 was given. I think it's because the spawn boss here, yeah, needs to be self. I forgot a self. And I think everything else has self. That should be fine then. All right, so it looks like we have some text. Let's just go through this. So yeah, the world boss is spawned. Everybody gets a message that the world boss is spawned, which is good. And then the tank engages the boss. And then every single player gets a notification that the tank has engaged the boss. I guess one thing that you would do is you wouldn't really need to get a message to yourself about yourself if you are the tank player. So what you can normally do is if you have, if every single player has an ID and you're looping through here, you wouldn't notify the player if you wouldn't notify the player if the player who's triggering the event is the one that's receiving the event, if you know what I mean. So obviously if I'm the one that's triggering the event, I don't need the notification sent to me. So you would just basically send it to every other player except me. So that's pretty simple. And again, you have an observer and you have some subscribers, and all those subscribers will subscribe to a certain object. And then whenever that object gets updated, it just basically sends out the message to everybody else. I guess another way you could think of it is if you have like again, if you're doing an online game, well, each player would have their own client, which is just the game that's running on their computer. And if I move in the game, it sends a request to the server, but then the server would have to send a notification to all of its subscribers, which is all the other players, that something has changed, which in this case is my position. That's why when I move, all the other players would see that I moved because all the clients need to be updated with the new information. So it's kind of the same idea with having a server and having any changes that one player does gets reflected. Of course, in that case, there's always a slight delay. You don't see it right away. So like if you are, if you're watching somebody else beside you, um, you'll do something on your screen and then you won't see the reflection of your character on your friend's screen who's just beside you because of the delay. But anyways, so that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe, and of course let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. See you next time on Code. Paalam.